name's Darren McQuillan, originally from the UK. Been in the States now for about 30 years. I've worked with quite a few companies, but now I'm working with a company called Bardex Corporation. Their corporate office is based in California. Their engineering offices and business development is based in Houston. And I head up their global business development.
Thank you for that. What's your specialisation, your company specialisation, particularly for your point of view?
From my point of view, I mean, my background is heavy construction industry. I manage billion-dollar projects. I've managed some of the biggest yards in the world, and they actually bring a lot of solutions to the table that mitigate many issues being faced by industry today, especially around shipbuilding, ship repair, which is, and they use the ship lift system, which has been working for defense and commercial companies for decades. So the company's been lifting submarines out of the water for 30 plus years without incident. And we use a chain lift system, not a cable system. So the O&M and everything else, the operating and maintenance is much cheaper, much leaner, and it maximizes uptime. So from a defense standpoint, this is where it gets critical. So again, I like their solutions around that. They also do a lot with oil and gas around their mooring solutions. And they actually started their time actually up in the North Sea working on the rigs. So they've actually got a lot of history in the UK if you go back far enough. Now, the company is an engineering solutions provider. So we get involved with many interesting technological engineering where they require out-of-the-box thinking. And we're doing a lot now with, let's say, offshore wind to support Scotland and globally. So that's another area I get involved with. So I'm an SME being supported in UK for renewables for 3-4 years now. And now I'm supporting the defense side of the business, or doing both actually, because there is a sweet spot where both markets can actually work together to support each other. And I'm happy to go into details on that, if you want later.
Yeah, well, that's good. We'll maybe catch up with some of that later on. But, currently in the UK, obviously, we're looking to see what kind of collaboration are you having, particularly around in-screen. Are you linking up with anybody like Malcolm War and people like that to discuss opportunities?
Yep. So it was great to get in touch with Malcolm and yourself around in-screen. There's many opportunities in the UK. So just to put things in a little bit of perspective, with what's happening with China from a geopolitical situation, this has now become the next existential threat, and it's a global issue. So you're seeing a lot of things where NATO has been asking allied companies to start giving more with regards to GDP for defense, so 2 to 5%. So you're going to see a lot more money being spent on the defense industry globally. So this is not a US thing. So the US just announced what's called the Shipbuilding Act. Something similar will happen if it's not already happening in the UK, Europe, and some of it's already happening to support Australia through the AUKUS program, which is based on a new ballistic submarine fleet. And a lot of that is going to come from the UK. Between Barrow Inverness and also between the facilities in Faslane as they wind down the Astute class. So this is shipbuilding on a scale that is probably I would never see in my lifetime when you look at the requirements of what needs to be built. And this is going to revitalize the whole of the shipbuilding industry, whether it's to build ships or components for ships or supply chain or anything that would support the building of ships or submarines. So industry has to come together to embrace the challenge here to meet what is required and the goals that have been set, which are pretty stringent goals. You got to remember, China can build about 200 times more than the allied nations put together. So if we don't become self-sufficient and try and dominate the oceans, then in principle, once you lose the oceans, you've lost trade, you've lost everything else. Now, hopefully we'll never see this. Hopefully it'll never happen. But that's sort of the big picture. So now let's get to places like Inchgrain. Inchgrain have been seen as, what is the term? I'm looking for it now. I thought it was interesting. I found it on the internet. So it's a monster. Is it a monster waiting to happen? Or let's free the monster or something like that. It's an asset on the cloud.
Darren, sorry, can I just jump in? I'm really sorry. Would you be able to balance the phone like on something so that it's not? That's amazing. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
You're not asking me to start again, eh?
No. No.
All right, because it's not scripted. It won't be the second time around. So okay, so let me just find a couple of notes here that I made, right? So what I made a note of here, pretty much the article that I saw was the sleeping giant. So based on what I was saying with regards to global defense, I think it's time to wake up the sleeping giant and many other assets similar to that. At one point on the Clyde in Greenock, it was one of the global leaders in shipbuilding and repair. And what happened in the 80s and from there was an absolute travesty where all of the work went overseas. Now there's a big drive to be more self-sufficient and less reliant, let's say, on China, which I guess everybody has done conveniently because it's been made easy for us over the last 40 years or so. So assets like Inchgrain are paramount for being able to support national defense. But even if it wasn't national defense, it's an asset that should be being used constantly. There's companies in Ireland that I know of that send their fleets to Europe for maintenance and repair. And my question is why? If you look at the UK as a whole, or Scotland as a whole, east and west coast, there's not enough dry docks to be able to service existing assets out there as we speak at the moment. So there's already a business case to be able to bring Inchgrain back to life, bring the monster back to life. Now, to make Inchgrain operationally efficient to where you can make more money, and I'm not here doing a sales pitch, but again, Bardex solutions enable you to work on more than one asset at a time. So if we look at Inchgrain, it's a graving dock. Graving docks were built for a purpose many years ago to work on large vessels. Now, to make them operationally efficient, what you see globally is companies trying to bring in 1, 2, or 3 assets into the graving dock. So in essence, it's a last in, first out scenario, which is really inefficient and hinders the operations inside of the graving dock and slows schedules and things like that. Bardex solution is where you could retrofit, in principle, the Inchgrain with a ship lift. So you can actually elevate the ships, the submarines, out of the water to grade level and then actually skid them out onto the land. So the second you move it out onto the land, then you can work on more than one asset at a time. And you can change the orientation of what the load out requirements are. So it's no longer last in, first out. You can change the orientation based on an optimized schedule. So again, from a commercial standpoint, Inchgrain is in a perfect location to come back to life. The real estate there is enough to be able to stand up support, let's say, for the Astute class submarines, which are going to be at some point being decommissioned because of the new dreadnoughts coming in, or they maybe repair and still keep the Astute class around until the dreadnought fleet is up and running. But again, it provides a much needed location now, because the world is going to focus on new construction. And I just was up on the Hill a few weeks ago with courtesy through the SCA, which is the Shipbuilding Council of America. And the biggest thing they were talking about was repair. We can build and build and build and build, but we already have a backlog of repair that needs to be done. So the more you build, in principle, your repair backlog grows because the facilities that do new construction are the ones that also do the repair. So you're going to have other locations opened up to be able to support the repair that's needed. So again, Inchgreen is in a perfect location right next to Faslane. You've got astute class going in there, eventual dreadnoughts going in there, and it provides them a much more efficient execution model to be able to turn around mission critical assets and get them in the water as quickly as possible. So I hope that answers your question a little bit there, Robert.
Yeah, well, it seems pretty positive, that. But the situation, talking to Malcolm, he's quite impressed with how Western Australia deals with different aspects of commercial and military. And he's talking about, common users facilities, which seems to be quite successful in Western Australia. And it provides excellent for the economy, and a lot of skilled jobs are provided. What's your opinion on these, that whole thinking behind this common users facility? Is that something that Inchgreen should be looking at positively?
Yes. So the common user facility has come about because we only have so many locations to be able to do stuff, right? To put it simply. So, the shipyards in Europe are very small. Why they're small? They were built around initially shipbuilding villages, and then they tried to expand a little bit, but it usually went to the town, the churches, and then the farmers and everybody else. So these footprints tend to be relatively small. And we can't grow any more land, and we can't grow any more real estate. So we have to think about what we can do with the existing facilities that we have, because to stand up, let's say, a new location would take a long time. So the multi-use facilities come about to also help future-proof the port. So if you design it just for defense to do one thing, then that's all it's ever going to be able to do. If you design it for multiple markets, then you level load the DevEx that get pumped in by the government or whoever private sector to be able to modernize and upgrade the yard. But it provides a levelized DevEx for the port over the next 40 years. So it requires a lot more thinking strategically about what you want to do with the port. The same with Inchgreen. You need to think out 40 years. Whatever site location you have, you need to think out 40 years and then design for what you think that might be. Sometimes you can let your mind go crazy and things like that. But if you don't, then you're going to end up just being able to manage a single asset, a single type of asset, and things like that. So again, I agree with what's happening in Australia. We're involved with that a little bit. But this is a common theme that I've been talking with industry about, whether in all market sectors, everybody's going to be fighting over the same real estate. So instead of fighting, we need to figure out how we can jointly use it. And it's actually to the best interest of the community, because if you can level load the DevEx, if you can use multiple market scenarios for the port, and the port is designed to accommodate that, then you provide work for the foreseeable future. If you plan out 40 years, you should never run out of work. And the goal of this, and the goal for Bardex in our methodology for execution, is maximizing local content to maximize skill growth locally. Now, bringing skills back on the Clyde is going to be awesome if we can make it happen. We need to bring back the trades. We need to bring back welders. We need to bring back fitters. We need to bring back everybody that was there involved in shipbuilding, because we're in a shipbuilding renaissance at the minute. Just really waiting for the UK to move forward on that. It's already happening in the UK, and hopefully you guys will hear it soon. It's already happening in the US, so hopefully you guys will hear it soon in the UK. But it's already happening in Australia. Everything's geared up to support that through the AUKUS program, which is the common use facility in Henderson. So again, I hope that answers your question. I get excited about things, so it probably rolled on a little bit there.
I think it was more enthusiasm and excitement. I think that's what we're looking for, to be honest. I mean, the other thing is that I know you're involved in wind farms. You just mentioned it at the start of the interview. So, I mean, we in Scotland are building quite a number of wind farms, and basically we've also got the telecoms industry, which we're getting a lot of cables having to be laid, and obviously they're open for damage also. So that there's going to be a marine facility required for wind farms the building of the ships that actually maintain them, and also actually providing security for the cable laying. I mean, that seems to me a common users facility. You have the military at one side, and then you have the commercial business at the other. What's your thought process in that? Because I know you're quite high up in the wind farms. I think you chair quite a substantial committee relative to that. I wonder if you could explain some of that for us, please.
Absolutely. I mean, it would take me an hour to go through the wind stuff, but we can keep it short and sweet. So again, with offshore wind, they're talking about, just from an O&M standpoint, to be able to maintain these huge wind farms when they actually pick up on the west coast. You're going to need quite a few vessels, right? And where do they come from, and where do they get serviced? So there's, like I said, there's not enough locations on the west coast to be able to service all the ships currently now. If you opened up Inchgreen, then it would be busy now. That's pretty much guaranteed, right? You'd probably get a lot of assets coming in there now. But with regards to future growth, the offshore wind needs somewhere to take their fleet to be serviced. And you can't keep taking it to the same ports, because there's already like a 90-day backlog in some of these graving docks or dry docks that are currently being used. So what this does, it drives up costs, because now you need redundancy in the fleet. So to be able to account for the 90 days where you have vessels out of service, or a month when they're out of service, whatever it is, it's still downtime, and it still requires additional fleets. So again, there's opportunities there. There's opportunities for warehousing also, for critical parts that are needed for the wind farms. So again, there's a lot that could be done at Inchgreen to support the O&M side of things, and then the warehousing and stuff like that, if you were looking at sort of a multi-use port. Now, with regards to the telecoms and things like that, and repair ships, I don't think there's enough happening on that side of it, right? So on the west side of Scotland, this would be a perfect location for the maintenance and repair of these telecom repair vessels. So these are from a national security standpoint, we need to make sure that the integrity of these communication cables are intact. So having a dedicated facility that could support that would be another thing that would stand up, bringing the monster back to life, right, as it were, for Inchgreen. So there's multiple opportunities for that facility, and it will be a travesty to see it turned over to condos.
And with that background that you've just highlighted there, do you think there's people out there, investors, that's just waiting for opportunities, collective opportunities to actually make an investment? And do you see there is investors out there just anxious to actually start something positive?
Absolutely. I mean, to help, we could help build a business case for Inchgreen, which maybe could bring in private investors. So we could do that. We use data analytics to help look at the vessel volume in the region and the vessel traffic. So that could be done quite easily. But because of where I understand it, I don't understand the whole story, but it's owned by a developer. So at some point, government's going to have to intervene, right? So do they want housing, or do they want to bring skilled jobs back to the region and back to the area? To me, it's all about bringing work back and bringing communities together and providing money for the communities, and having an industry that needs to grow again, which is what I mentioned before. If we let it die completely on the Clyde, you will never get it back.
I agree with that. Yeah. The situation is that we have two, we would say, investors who are interested in Inchgreen, but there seems to be this logjam of the company that owns Inchgreen, Peel Ports, seem reluctant somehow to actually open it up because they're afraid of the competition. That's our position on it. They maybe have a different story to tell. But you said that we're doing a feasibility study at the moment. I think you've seen the feasibility study, though. We've sent it out for people to bid to actually do the feasibility study. Does that look a positive option for the campaign to continue with?
Oh, absolutely. You've got to keep moving it forward. Otherwise, again, once you stop talking about it, it'll die, right? So you have to keep it alive. So the biggest messaging for me, again, that's what I'm trying to do anyway over in the States for assets similar to Inchgrain, is you can turn these into more efficient operating locations for defense. So now, if you're looking for monies, then Ministry of Defense would be a go-to place, because now you're providing what I would class as an insurance policy. Even having that asset there, working commercial assets and things like that, and you're looking for money, at some point, the Navy or navies are going to need that as an insurance policy to deal with mission critical repairs. At some point in the future, if it hits the fan, then they're not going to have enough locations to get vessels back into flight. So again, what I'm trying to talk over here about is more of an insurance policy. So if you have all of these yards that could be, and assets like Inchgrain that could be reinvigorated, repurposed for defense, then again, it provides an insurance policy for the US Navy, for the UK Navy, for the European Navy, in the event that they need it. So is it in their best interest to pay a certain amount of money to bring that back alive? I would say yes. As a long-term insurance policy, it's cheap as chips compared to them trying to build a new facility. So again, it's a different way of thinking. But again, if you stop talking about this, it'll die. But you need to get it. I think you and Malcolm are doing a great job to get it as high as you can with the government and things like that. Bringing more MOD folk into this to look at the options and let them envisage and picture what could actually be done to the site in the event that they need it. Then I think that might be another avenue where to go. But don't stop talking about it.